Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Sharon Bown, and joining us this evening from the Royal Australian Navy is Warrant Officer Sherry Thiers. Today we commemorate the 105th anniversary of the Battle of Broodseinde Ridge. By October 1917, the British attempt to push through the strongly fortified defences enclosing the Ypres salient and drive the Germans from the surrounding ridges had met with some success. This great attack, known as the Third Battle of Ypres, or more commonly as Passchendaele, consisted of a series of bite and hold operations. Assaults would be heralded by a massive artillery bombardment before a creeping barrage led troops to their objectives and protected them while they consolidated their positions. The 1st and 2nd Australian Divisions had met with success at Menin Road in September, followed by the 4th and 5th Australian Divisions pushed through Polygon Wood. Before dawn on the 4th of October 1917, 105 years ago today, the 1st, 2nd and 3rd Divisions prepared to attack German positions on Broodseinde Ridge. At 5:30 a.m, a German artillery bombardment fell with heavy casualties before the attack had even begun. Half an hour later, the Australians advanced, only to be confronted by a line of troops advancing towards them in no man's land. The Germans had chosen the same morning to launch an attack of their own. The Australians pushed forward through the German assault waves to take Broodseinde Ridge. The battle was seen as a great success and came to be recorded as the Black Day of October 4 in the official German history. But, as ever, the victory was not without cost. 3 Australian divisions had suffered 6,500 casualties. In the afternoon, right after the Broodseinde operation had been completed, it began to rain. The devastated battlefield became a quagmire. In these conditions, it was impossible to drag forward enough artillery and ammunition to maintain adequate support. The British Army and its Commonwealth troops would eventually succeed in capturing Passchendaele, but mud, artillery, and machine gun fire would cost countless lives. Today, we remember the Battle of Broodseinde Ridge. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. We warmly welcome the family of Private Ernest Alfred Hall, whose story will be told shortly. We are also honoured to acknowledge Lieutenant General Michael Gutlin, Commander, Space Systems Command, United Space Force, and Rear Admiral Mohammed Haq, Senior Directing Staff of the Bangladesh National Defence College, Bangladesh Navy. We also welcome their accompanying delegations. We welcome Mr. John King, President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, ACT branch, and we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching a broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, by visitors to the memorial, and by students on behalf of the Australian Christian College, Launceston, from Newnham, Tasmania. If you are able, would you now please stand and join in singing the national anthem?
abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Those requiring a seat, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that would help Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Ernest Alfred Hall. Ernest Hall was born on the 25th of August, 1895, the eldest son of Ernest and Ada Hall of Beech Forest, Victoria. The family lived on a potato and dairy farm in the Otway Ranges. He had two younger brothers, Walter and Frank. In 1909, Frank was out shooting rabbits when he accidentally discharged his firearm and shattered his arm, resulting in it being amputated below the elbow. After completing his education at the local school, Ernest went to work as a farmer like his father. Ernest enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in November 1915. Aged 19 at the time of his enlistment, he did so with the permission of both of his parents. Hall underwent a period of training in Australia before leaving for active service overseas at the end of the year with the reinforcements to the 5th Battalion. Hall first went to Egypt, where he transferred to the 1st Pioneer Battalion. There, he continued his training and was also afforded the opportunity to do some sightseeing, writing home to his family. 7 of us went to view the pyramids last Sunday, and my word, it was a great sight. We climbed the biggest, which was named Cheops. It was a great view from the top. On one side, it was the great desert like waves of the ocean as far as the eye can reach, while on the other is the River Nile, with beautiful farm plots all along it. I also had a look over the Sphinx and some of the underground passages of old-time cities. In April 1916, Hall left Egypt with his unit and made his way to France. Shortly after its arrival on the Western Front, the 1st Pioneer Battalion detached men, including Private Hall, to the 2nd Australian Tunnelling Company. He spent the next 2 months helping to construct mines and tunnels towards German positions in the Condonnerie salient, before being transferred back to the 1st Pioneer Battalion. The primary function of the Pioneer Battalions on the Western Front was to labour in the many construction jobs required by trench warfare, digging trenches, constructing strong points and clearing the battlefield. In a number of instances, pioneers were attached to the waves of attacking infantry to undertake these tasks even as the battle was going on around them. Hall's unit saw out the rest of the year serving in this capacity before the bitterly cold winter set in. After spending a freezing Christmas at the front, Hall wrote home to his brother Wal in February 1917. There's not much news to tell. Things are going on just the same as ever. We are bombarding very heavily tonight. I'll bet Fritz is having a lively time of it. We're still getting frosty weather. The ground is as hard as iron, even to the depth of over a foot down. The morning was a white frost. All the trees were covered in snow, and those that know this part of the globe say 3 of these and then rain. So I suppose we'll have mud again shortly. The ground is that hard that shells will skip if they happen to strike on a bit of a slope. The other evening, one went right through 3 of our dugouts and hit the ground once in doing so, and it looked as if it hit the ground before it came near us. Luckily, it was a dud, and no one got hit. But some had narrow squeaks, and you can bet we had a rather uncanny feeling in the expectation of more to follow. Over the next few months, Hall's battalion spent time working on the light rail near a French village of Bullecourt. And towards the middle of the year, they moved to Belgium to participate in the big British offensive planned, which would become known as the Third Battle of Ypres. After a short stint in the trenches near Ypres, Hall was granted a period of leave in August 1917 and travelled to England. He returned to the front later that month and was engaged in labouring work with his unit in Belgium. On the night of the 4th of October 1917, Hall and his comrades were engaged in constructing Helles and Jabber's track from the front line around West Hawke. Their efforts continued into the following day as the Battle of Broodseinde Ridge began. As the fighting raged on around them, they carried out their work on the communication trenches and strongpoints and laid duckboards to combat the muddy conditions. While carrying out this work, they came under heavy shell fire, and Hall and several of his comrades were killed in action. Both of Ernest Hall's brothers attempted to enlist in the AIF. Frank was turned down because of his amputated limb, but Walter was accepted and was in training camp in Australia when Ernest was killed. He survived the war, returning to Beech Forest in 1919. Private Ernest Hall is buried in Belgium Battery Corner Cemetery near Ypres. His family remembered him as one of the best, and his epitaph reads, "In memory of the dearly loved son of Mr. and Mrs. Hall of Beech Forest." Ernest Hall was 22 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside this pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Ernest Alfred Hall, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes today's last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.